When I was first starting out, when I was a Christian, I found myself dissatisfied with what I considered normal. I was used to going to church, reading the Bible, not just going to church, but participating in church. I was the churchiest church kid because I wanted to. Church was fun. I didn't leave Christianity because it wasn't helping or that it wasn't working. In fact, I was even my pastor was moving in a certain degree of healing and miracles. So I'm not someone who left Christianity due to dissatisfaction with Christianity alone. But as a Christian, there were moments of dissatisfaction that came in through the supernatural, especially when I started reading the Bible over and over again. I actually read the Bible cover to cover several times. As a teenager, refreshing myself on it more as an adult. But one of the things that started to trigger me is that I was reading in the Bible about all this supernatural stuff. I was raised Baptist, so we kind of worship the King James Bible. We're almost told that, hey, yes, that same God that's in the Bible is living today. But if you want to hear from God, then you got to read the Bible. It's only what's in the Bible. Sola Scriptura. So I remember reading the Bible for myself and I'm seeing these things. I'm seeing Moses part water. I'm seeing Elijah part water and call fire down. I'm seeing Samuel operate in such a degree of the prophetic that the spirit of prophecy was his self-defense. I'm looking at people like Joshua speak to the sun and the moon, and they stop, freezing time so that they can have a battle. I'm seeing all this amazing stuff in the Bible. Then I get to, Ezekiel raising an entire civilization from the dead. I get over to the New Testament. You have Yeshua raising the dead, healing the sick, walking on water. And then I read a verse that got me in so much trouble, which provoked me, which actually was foundational for me as I started to pursue the supernatural myself. Because coming from a Baptist community, though my pastor moved in it to a certain degree, he didn't know how he did it. Therefore, he couldn't teach me how to do it. He honored my hunger. He didn't get in my way. I had no issues with my former pastor. Even now, we get along, love him. But I read a verse that got me in trouble with other Baptists, other people around that time, just because it was so far out of their framework, but it inspired me to go beyond. And that was John 14:12 through 14. If you believe in me and the works that I do, those same works shall you do. Wow. I'm reading that and I'm going, so the walking on water, the raising the dead, the casting out demons, we can do that stuff. He said we can do it. That blew my mind because as a Christian, what I was used to hearing is he's the only one that can do that. No one but you, Lord. But here is the Lord saying that I can do it. So then I get to the next verse and it says, but even I tell you, greater works than these shall you do because I go to the Father. I'm like, wait, there's greater works to be done? Okay, there's two tiers to this. We can do his works and then we can go beyond him. Oh my goodness, let's work on doing what he did. So I started to engage the Bible as a book of possibilities, not just a history book of things that happened, but I applied the law of testimony that said, if it happened before, it can happen again. If God was willing to work with someone else and produce these miracles and these supernatural feats with them, I'm a possibility. I won't count myself out. So I remember there was at one moment, I came across Pastor Lillian DeFinn, who is Smith Wigglesworth's great granddaughter. And she was talking about a story where they had a bunch of furniture come in that they didn't order. And the guy that was working said, look, lady, we don't care. Here's your brand new furniture. Just sign for it here. You sign for it. It's yours. Bye. She was like, you own what you sign for. And that stuck with me. So I started to apply that principle to the Bible and even the other books that I was studying, where anytime I came across a supernatural manifestation that I did not have, but I wanted, I signed my signature next to it in that book. So I went through the Bible. Elijah calls down fire. My signature's there. Ezekiel raised a civilization. My signature's there. Joseph's interpreting dreams. My signature's there. My signature's all over my old Bible. It's everywhere. Every time I saw something that I wanted, I signed for it, and I began to see it in my life. Not just that, but when I started reading God's Generals, I'm reading about Amy Semple McPherson, how her daughter said, man, those clouds are beautiful. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could have one? And it talked about how she got out the car, grabbed a bottle and prayed, and the cloud filled the bottle, and she put it in and gave it to her kids. That one day the kids were complaining that their shoes were too small, and she didn't have enough money at the time to get them any new shoes. So she prayed and the shoes stretched to fit their feet. I was reading stuff like that. I'm like, wow, there's so many things that can be done if you learn to apply faith to a situation, if you learn how to get the supernatural involved into your natural world. So I was going through God's Generals, signing my signature. William Branham, this happened. William Seymour, that happened. This happened. And I'm getting inspired, because the thing that's changing is that I'm losing the boundary that says God can do this, just not with me. Someone else can experience this. I can't. And that's a subtle lie that most of us believe that keeps us from moving in the supernatural. Excluding yourself, believing that it's possible, but believing it's not possible for you. So as I began to familiarize myself with these stories, they stopped sounding outlandish and they started to sound normal. And when they started to sound normal, that's when I started to see them happen. So I started to see people getting healed. I started to see people. I was casting out demons in high school. I did my first dead raising in high school. I started traveling in the spirit. I'm reading about Enoch. I'm preaching immortality and getting in trouble as a Baptist because death matters a lot in religion. And I'm like, no, he died for our sin. The Bible says the wages of sin is death. You sin, you die. He died for our sins, which means we don't pay for something that's already paid for. They're like, no, you still have to die. I'm like, he died for me, right? So let's just say there's things you get in trouble for when you actually start to read the Bible and actually start to take it serious. But I'm starting to see at this point, I'm starting to see the fruit of the supernatural in my life. I'm actually having occurrences. I'm actually having different things happen to me. I'm having visitations from the cloud of witnesses, angels I'm seeing and I'm interacting with and I'm getting impartation from. I'm starting to work with the seven spirits who are teaching me how to move in the spirit, all types of things as it relates to my sonship journey. I'm seeing the Father. I'm seeing Holy Spirit. I'm seeing Yeshua. My life is only going up from one moment to the next because I'm allowing my faith to build upon itself and I'm allowing myself to be inspired. I'm staying in a space where I'm constantly feeding myself off of the testimonies of other people's success. And then I'm not counting myself out as a possibility that it can occur through me. So I'm seeing it. Some of the things that I experienced for years when I was laying in my hammock, because before I got married, I had replaced my bed with a hammock. So I was sitting in my hammock. I would lay in my hammock and pray. And every day as I was praying, storm clouds would form on the ceiling. Dark clouds with electricity crackling through them. They would form in my ceiling. Glory clouds would manifest for about a year. I had gold dust manifesting on me everywhere I went. It was amazing. Now, these were some of those things that I wasn't necessarily reading in the Bible, but it was opening up just because I was considering it possible. Now, the thing that really pushed me over the edge into some other things in the supernatural is when Yeshua told me one day, he said, I don't want you to read the Bible anymore. Put it down. I don't want you to read that right now. And I'm a reader. I like to read. So I'm like, what are we replacing it with? What you want me to read? He said, I want you to get back into fiction. Start reading comics, start reading anime or manga again. Get back into reading fiction. And I understood why. It's because in fiction the possibilities are limitless. So he was pretty much telling me, and he did tell me, apply the same measure of faith that you were doing the stories that you knew were true to these things that you know aren't, and you'll start to see those manifestations too. So I'm buying superhero encyclopedias from Marvel and DC, and I'm signing my name next to certain characters. I'm like, yeah, give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that. I'm reading through, I'm making lists. I'm like, this person, and I'm seeing their manifestations. I'm one of those people that like to push the extent of the Bible. I'm like, if you claim to be God's book, let's put you to the test. Let's see if you're really going to do this stuff. I remember hearing all my life, God is able to do exceedingly above all that you could ask, think, or imagine. I'm like, I can imagine myself in all these superhero scenarios. You got to outperform me, big dog. So I started to experience some of those supernatural feats, not all of them. I didn't engage it for too long. I engaged for maybe a year and a half before I honestly forgot, or I started focusing on other more specific things that I wanted to master. For years, I had this thing that I created, a concept that I created called P5, which dealt with demonstration, which was 5 ways to demonstrate power. And it was eyesight. It was through touch. It was through voice. It was through gestures. And I forget what the 5th one is. But there were 5. Oh, through presence, just being close enough. And I remember I was engaging that. That was a concept I created on my own. I'm like, I want to be able to demonstrate and release power through these 5 avenues. So that's what I was going after. Being able to release power and heal just by looking at people, which I've done. People being able to just hear my voice and the power that's laced into it, and they get healed. If you're paying attention, this is a good moment if you need healing to receive that while I'm talking. People just being close enough to me. I don't actually have, if we're close enough to each other, I don't actually have to talk to you for you to get your healing. Another friend of mine, Apostle Wasanga, is the same way. He used to, in his early days, he used to have people sit next to him while he watched a movie and they'd get their healing. He's like, I don't have to focus on you. You get your healing because you're close enough. And he put on a movie and watch it. So I really started to push that ask, think, or imagine thing to the limits. I'm like, let's try this out. And I started to see manifestations. I was engaging power in just my presence alone. I remember I was praying for that every day, engaging for it every day. And one day, one of my classmates said, how come it's always hot whenever you're around? And that's when I knew that this is something I was already walking in. So creativity is a thing. Being creative with the supernatural. Some things haven't been done just because people are afraid of their imagination. The imagination has its usages in certain contexts. I don't use the imagination when it comes to moving and actually traveling in the spirit or in the other realms. No, it's kind of problematic there. But when it comes to coming up with new things to do or new usages of the supernatural, your imagination and creativity are limitless. My spiritual father, Cobus Van Rensburg, talking about meditation, described it in his form. He said, meditation is like watching a cow eat food. It picks up some grass and then it chews it and it chews it and it chews it. Then it swallows it and it digests it. Then it brings it back up and it chews it some more and it chews it. Then it swallows it and digests it. Then it brings it back up. And he said, that's how I started moving in the supernatural. He said, I watched other prophets be able to call people out of the audience and tell them their name and tell them this and that about them. And I said, wow, that would be great to do. So what he said he did is he said he'd go in his prayer closet and he would just sit there and he would imagine himself moving in the spirit, doing those things that he couldn't yet. He would imagine himself calling people out of the audience by name and prophesying to them and telling them facts about their lives. He imagined himself laying hands on people with missing legs and their legs growing out. Eventually, he got to do that just because he imagined himself doing it and didn't disqualify himself from these supernatural events. So if you learn anything else today, know that the possibilities are actually limitless, and you not only need to think bigger, but you need to think more inclusively regarding yourself. Oh, some of you have no problem believing that I can do these things. You struggle believing that you can do these things. So agree with me and Yeshua when we say you can do this stuff and more. The possibilities are actually limitless. I'm looking for a day. Let's talk about the things. I'll talk for a moment about the things that I'm inspired by that I can't do yet, but I look forward to. I have successfully done 9 dead raisings. I don't consider myself good at it. I won't consider myself good at dead raising until I can go to a graveyard and speak to it and say, all of y'all get up and go home. And now legislation has to be passed to figure out what do we do with these people that were dead for 20, 30, 40 years and their houses are in someone else's name now because they left it in the will. All this stuff. I want to create some new problems with this. I'm looking forward to a day where if someone's dead, we don't even go to the graveyard. We could just buy some dirt and create fresh bodies out of the dirt and call them into. This is just me thinking outlandish, right? I'm looking for a day where these gatherings that we have aren't even hosted on earth anymore, that we can go into the heavens physically together and meet up in certain spots of heaven. Right now, I'm still convincing y'all that you can go at all and that you don't have to die to go. There's a learning curve we're getting over. Though this has happened in some of my meetings where the cloud of witnesses and the 7 spirits and the royal family has showed up and other people were able to see them, I'm looking forward to the day where they're so engrossed in our culture and the lines are so blurred that I can actually put them on the roster. I can put a picture of Samson on the flyer. He's ministering in the conference too. Catherine Kuhlman's ministering again. The things like that, where we can actually put some of these saints back into work. That's the stuff I think about, and that's the stuff I work towards. I'd been engaged in that since 2017. I didn't start seeing that in my ministry, in my actual meetings, until 2023 maybe, is when I started having meetings and the cloud of witnesses or the 7 spirits or the royal family would show up. That was years of training towards something that no one was talking about. That I was chasing the fact that if I can imagine it, it can happen, and then it did, and now it's starting to happen. I'm not just people, but there's extinct species that I want to restore to life, which has happened almost every time I have a meeting, a large gathering. One of the manifestations that comes after is that they either find an animal that they thought was extinct, or they resurrect a species that was extinct. Last time I had a meeting, they brought the dire wolf back. People were like, oh, it's not technically a dire wolf. I say close enough. So I'm looking at a future that doesn't exist yet, but I'm determined to make it happen. And that's pushing the limits of this greater works thing. So not only do I want y'all to believe more, but I want y'all to push the limits. Get outlandish in the things that you're willing to engage the spirit for. That you're actually willing to put in some time and some effort into bringing into this reality. Hopefully some things that I shared here today were able to inspire you. You were able to learn something. You were able to get some momentum. If you want to connect with me and all the work that I'm doing, know that you can find me on my website, caveofmystery.org. There you can find my courses, classes, books, trainings, and everything else. Information is on the homepage. And that's pretty much it. Y'all take care. Until next time, y'all be blessed. Later.